Harris campaign criticized for failing to connect with working-class voters. Okay, let's dive into this. Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, it kind of hit a wall when it came to connecting with working-class Americans. And that's according to none other than Liz Shuler. She's the president of the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, AFL-CIO, which, by the way, is the largest labor union federation in the United States. This organization represents over 12.5 million workers across 60 national and international unions. So, she knows what she's talking about. Now, here's the thing. Shuler didn't pull any punches. She said Harris's campaign didn't resonate with low-income workers. Why? Well, because instead of listening to these folks, the campaign leaned too much on telling people versus listening. That's a pretty strong critique. According to Shuler, working-class voters are still feeling the pinch of economic insecurity, and the campaign's messaging just didn't align with their day-to-day struggles. Disconnect between messaging and real-life struggles. So here's where it gets interesting. Shuler talked about this disconnect between the Harris campaign's focus on accomplishments under Joe Biden's administration, like investments in infrastructure and worker-friendly policies, and what struggling families are actually experiencing. Think about it. If you're a person who's barely scraping by, trying to put food on the table while battling rising inflation, you're probably not swayed by a list of achievements. I mean, sure, those accomplishments are important, but they don't necessarily answer the question, how does this help me right now? And then there's Donald Trump. Like it or not, his messaging was effective in this space. He framed the election around one key question: are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And according to Shuler, a lot of people answered yes. That's wild, right? But it shows how messaging can hit home when it feels relevant to people's lived experiences. AFL-CIO's role in union support. Okay, so let's talk unions. The AFL-CIO and most labor unions did back Harris over Trump. That's important. According to Shuler, Harris had about a 17-point lead among union members, which is a big deal. But, and here's the kicker, outside of union circles, low-influence union circles disproportionately swallowed Trump. That's a tough pill to swallow for any campaign. Shuler said the unions did their part, mobilizing members through efforts like door-knocking campaigns and get-out-the-vote initiatives. In fact, union members turned out at higher rates than the general public for Harris. Unions were effective in their own ranks, but translating that success to the broader working-class voter base, that's where things fell apart. Some unions, like the Teamsters, even decided to stay neutral, declining to endorse any candidate. That tells you something, doesn't it? Not everyone was fully on board with the Democratic messaging. The shadow of Trump's return. Right, let's switch gears for a second. Looking ahead, Shuler didn't mince words about the potential return of Donald Trump. She described it as a sucker punch for the labor movement. Ouch. But here's the thing, she's not backing down. In fact, she emphasized that the labor movement has survived presidents of all political stripes for over 100 years. They've seen it all and have no plans to fold now. Under Trump, Shuler expects the environment to be, not positive, but she said unions will continue to organize and fight back. That's what they do, right? They're used to playing both defense and offense. Defensive efforts will include resisting rollbacks of worker protections and regulatory changes. Meanwhile, on the offensive side, unions will keep focusing on organizing and growing their ranks. That's their bread and butter. Solidarity and mobilization. One thing Shuler really stressed was the importance of solidarity. It's not just a buzzword, it's a survival strategy. She mentioned a recent meeting of the AFL-CIO's Executive Council, which includes leaders from all 60 unions in the federation. The message? Stick together. Individual unions can't afford to fend off attacks alone, so they need to work as one cohesive force. Makes sense, right? And here's the kicker. Public support for unions is actually growing. According to a Gallup survey, 70% of Americans approve of labor unions, the highest level in nearly 60 years. Among younger people, that support is even higher. A whopping 88% of Americans under 30 view unions favorably. Wow. So, yeah, there's a lot of energy in the labor movement right now, especially among younger workers. Preparing for a fight. Shuler made it clear that the labor movement is gearing up for a fight. She called it a battle that will be both defensive and offensive. On the defensive side, unions are preparing to push back against any rollbacks of worker protections or anti-labor policies that might come out of a Trump administration. And let's be real, there's a good chance those challenges are coming. On the offensive side, unions are doubling down on organizing efforts. Shuler said growing their ranks remains the top priority, and it's not just about numbers. It's about building power at the workplace level. She pointed out that no matter what happens in Washington, the collective power of workers is what drives real change. I mean, yeah, that's the whole point of unions, right? What's next? Okay, so where does this leave us? Well, the Harris campaign's failure to connect with working-class voters serves as a wake-up call, not just for Democrats, but for anyone hoping to engage with this critical voter base. The AFL-CIO's experience shows that when messaging aligns with people's real-life struggles, it can galvanize action. But when there's a disconnect, voters look elsewhere, and in this case, many turn to Trump. For unions, the road ahead is clear but challenging. They'll need to fight on multiple fronts, resisting attacks while continuing to grow their movement. Shuler's comments reflect a deep understanding of the stakes and a determination to keep fighting, no matter who's in the White House. So, yeah, that's the story. What do you think? It's a tough situation, but there's definitely a lot to unpack here, right? Let me know your thoughts.